if you're graduating this year, how are you going to make sure that you do not peak in high school? What does that look like? For me, I think it's always being misplaced. It's always making sure that you feel that you don't fit in the current surrounding. I want to explain what do I mean by that. So if you can imagine a landscape, we actually often talk about landscapes in management. If you can think of a landscape that is rocky and hilly, and you're trying to find the optimal hill, the optimal peak. And this landscape, it's uncertain. You don't know what it actually looks like. The only thing that you actually know at a given moment is what the landscape looks like today. And if you want to actually figure out how not to peak in high school, you have to always be going to a place where the landscape doesn't exist, that it doesn't feel like you know what you're actually doing. It doesn't feel right in any sort of way, and people are going to think that you're crazy. And that's the thing. If you're going to think about where you're actually going to go and doing different things, you're going to have to not fit in with the current landscape, because people are going to be thinking about how the landscape actually looks today and what it feels like today. And so you can maximize in your given moment and do very well in the given moment, and neglect where things are going in 10, 20, 30 years. And if you don't want to peak in high school, what you need to do is think about where you're going to be in 30, 40, 50 years. And that's going to be a challenging thing for you to actually figure out how to actually get there. But the one thing I've noticed, the one thing that I have felt is I just don't feel like I belong at a given moment. I'm always thinking about where things are going, what you should do next, and how things are going to be in 20 and 30 and 40 years from now. So as long as you are feeling like you just don't quite fit in, like it doesn't necessarily the current environment, what you're going through, you're maybe not at the peak of the sort of status pole or whatever, right? You want to look at. If you want to do well, you always have to be thinking about an environment that is different, that is distinct, and that might be 20 to 30 years in the future. And so what you have to always feel is a little alone. You have to feel a little, you feel just that you don't fit in with the current environment. And by the time that you actually start to feel like you fit in with the current environment, you have to look for something that is different, that is distinct, that you're going to a different place. And so as you can imagine, all of this is a dynamic system that is constantly changing and going in different directions. And so as you age, to not peak in high school, you have to think about where you're going and think pretty far into the future, decades into the future. And if you're doing that, you're going to be the one damn fool that's doing it. Everybody else is going to be thinking about how they can fit in with the current environment and do well with where they are at this moment. So if you don't want to peak in high school, feel like you don't fit in. Feel like you are uncomfortable. Feel like you are alone. All of those things are healthy. That's what it means to feel like being a leader. I want you to actually start looking around and seeing Fortune 500 CEOs and looking at all those people that do really wonderful things in this world. They will almost always tell you that it's a very, very lonely journey. Leadership is a very lonely journey where you're the only one doing something and you're screaming that one crazy nut that's screaming and encouraging people to do things. But if you're that one lonely nut that's doing things, you have to be the person that stands up. And you have to have the courage to actually do that. So everybody else would be watching on the sidelines and they'll be thinking, hey, how come I don't do that? But by the time that they actually do that, it's going to be 10 years, maybe 20 years when you actually started doing this thing. And then you will become the trendsetter. You'll be the one person that's actually set this thing up. But the challenge is you'll be onto something else. It'll be something different and unique and doing something that maybe matters in another 20 to 30 years. So if you don't want to peak in high school, keep feeling out of place. Do that indefinitely.